My name is Gianna Adams, and 3 weeks ago, I received a housewarming gift that changed everything I thought I knew about trust, intuition, and the people we let into our lives. Inside an innocent looking gift basket was something that shouldn't have been there, a spare key to my new house. My boyfriend Marcus warned me not to trust my neighbor from day one, but I dismissed his concerns as paranoia. I was wrong, and what I discovered next will make you question every kind gesture from strangers. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Moving into 124-7 Maple Grove Lane felt like stepping into the life I had always dreamed of. After years of cramped apartment living in downtown Portland, I finally had my own house, a charming two-bedroom craftsman with original hardwood floors and a wraparound porch that caught the morning sun perfectly. At 26, I was proud to be a homeowner, especially knowing I had earned every square foot through 12-hour shifts as a pediatric nurse and careful saving for 3 years. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained lawns, the kind of place where people still waved from their front porches. During my house hunting visits, I had noticed children playing safely in yards while parents chatted over garden fences. It was exactly the kind of community I wanted to be part of after growing up in a series of temporary rentals with my single mother. My boyfriend Marcus helped me move in on a sunny Saturday in early October. We had been dating for 8 months, and while our relationship was still relatively new, he had been incredibly supportive throughout the home buying process. Marcus worked as a software developer for a tech startup, and his analytical mind often picked up on details I missed. He was methodical, cautious, and sometimes I thought he was overly suspicious of people's motives. As we carried boxes from the moving truck, I noticed a woman watching us from the house next door. She appeared to be in her early 40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and an outfit that looked more suited for a country club lunch than weekend yard work. When she caught me looking, she waved enthusiastically and started walking over. "You must be the new neighbor," she said with a bright smile, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Veronica Hartwell. Welcome to the neighborhood." "Gianna Adams," I replied, appreciating her friendly approach. "Thank you. This seems like such a lovely area." Veronica's smile widened. "Oh, it absolutely is. We have the most wonderful community here. Very close-knit, very supportive. I've been living here for 12 years now, so I know everyone. I'll have to introduce you around once you're settled." Marcus appeared beside me, carrying a heavy box labeled kitchen. His expression was polite but noticeably cooler as I introduced him to Veronica. She barely acknowledged him, instead focusing her attention entirely on me. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but you look so young to be buying a house on your own," Veronica said with what seemed like admiration. "Thank you," I said, feeling proud. "I'm a nurse at Children's Hospital, and I've been saving for a while." "A nurse," Veronica repeated, her eyes lighting up. "How wonderful. We could definitely use someone with medical knowledge in the neighborhood. I have 2 teenagers, Emma and Tyler, and you know how accident-prone kids can be." Marcus shifted the box in his arms. "We should probably get this inside," he said to me. "The truck needs to be returned by 6. "Of course," Veronica said quickly. "I don't want to keep you. I just wanted to say welcome and let you know that if you need anything at all, I'm right next door. Don't hesitate to ask." As we walked toward my front door, I felt grateful for such a warm welcome. Growing up, we had never stayed in one place long enough to really know our neighbors. Having someone nearby who seemed genuinely friendly felt like a good omen for this new chapter of my life. That evening, after the moving truck was gone and Marcus had helped me unpack the essentials, we ordered pizza and sat on my living room floor surrounded by boxes. The house felt enormous compared to my previous apartment, and I was already imagining how I would decorate each room. "So, what do you think of Veronica?" I asked Marcus as we shared a pepperoni pizza from a cardboard box. Marcus paused mid-bite, considering his words carefully. "She seems intense," he said finally. "Intense how?" "I don't know. Something about the way she was looking at you, asking all those questions, it felt like she was gathering information rather than just being friendly." I laughed. "Marcus, she was being neighborly. This is what normal people do when someone new moves in. Not everyone has ulterior motives. Maybe, he said, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Just be careful about sharing too much personal information too quickly. You don't really know her yet. His concern struck me as overly cautious, typical of his analytical personality. She's been living here for 12 years, I pointed out. If she had some kind of problem, wouldn't other neighbors have warned me during the home inspection process? Marcus shrugged. I'm probably being paranoid. It's just that she completely ignored me and seemed very focused on you specifically. Usually people acknowledge both partners when they meet a couple. I considered this, but decided he was reading too much in, which was probably just social awkwardness. Some people are simply more comfortable talking to women, especially about neighborhood matters. I appreciated that Marcus was protective of me, but I didn't want his skepticism to prevent me from building relationships in my new community. Over the next few days, I threw myself into the process of making the house feel like home. I hung pictures, arranged furniture, and slowly worked through the dozens of boxes stacked in every room. The routine of unpacking was actually therapeutic. Each item I found a place for made the space feel more like mine. Veronica proved to be as friendly as she had initially appeared. On Tuesday morning, she knocked on my door with a plate of homemade blueberry muffins still warm from the oven. I thought you might not have had time to do much cooking yet, she said when I answered the door in my pajamas and robe. Moving is exhausting. The muffins were delicious, and I was touched by the gesture. When I tried to return the plate later that day, Veronica invited me in for coffee. Her house was immaculately decorated in shades of cream and gold, with fresh flowers in every room and family photos arranged on glossy surfaces. "Your home is beautiful," I told her, as she poured coffee from an expensive-looking machine. "Thank you. I've put a lot of work into it over the years. Your house has such great bones, too. The previous owners, the Johnsons, were lovely people, but they weren't much for maintenance. I can already see you're going to take much better care of it." She showed me around, pointing out architectural details and sharing stories about neighborhood history. I learned that she was divorced, worked part-time as a real estate agent, and was very involved in local community organizations. Her teenagers were both in high school and seemed to spend most of their time at various extracurricular activities. "It gets quiet around here during the day," Veronica explained as we sat in her living room with our coffee. "Most of the neighbors work traditional hours, so it's usually just me and Mrs. Chen across the street, and she keeps to herself mostly." When I mentioned that I worked 3 12-hour shifts per week at the hospital, Veronica seemed particularly interested in my schedule. "So you have 4 days off each week?" she asked. "How wonderful! You'll have so much time to enjoy your new home and explore the area." I explained that I often picked up extra shifts and was considering pursuing additional nursing certifications, but Veronica seemed more focused on the fact that I would be home alone frequently during daylight hours. That evening, I called my best friend Sarah to catch up and share my excitement about the new house. Sarah and I had been friends since nursing school, and she had been my main source of support during the stressful home buying process. "How's the neighborhood?" Sarah asked. "Any interesting neighbors?" I told her about Veronica and her warm welcome. Sarah listened, but seemed less enthusiastic than I expected. "Just be careful about getting too close too fast," Sarah advised. "Some people can be overwhelmed when they're looking for a new best friend." Her words reminded me of Marcus's earlier caution, but I brushed off both concerns. I had lived in impersonal apartment complexes for years where neighbors barely acknowledged each other's existence. Having someone nearby who actually cared enough to bring muffins and offer friendship seemed like exactly what I had been missing. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The rest of the week passed peacefully. I established routines, figured out the best routes to work and the grocery store, and began to feel truly settled. My house was starting to feel like a home, and I was beginning to envision the life I could build there. Marcus came over Friday evening with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of wine to celebrate the end of my first week as a homeowner. We ate dinner on my back patio, enjoying the unusually warm October weather and watching the sunset through the maple trees that gave the street its name. "Any more encounters with your new best friend?" Marcus asked with a teasing smile. Veronica's been great, actually, I said. She brought me muffins earlier this week and showed me around her house. She's given me lots of good information about the neighborhood. Marcus nodded, but didn't comment further. I could tell he was making an effort not to voice his ongoing skepticism, which I appreciated. As we cleaned up dinner and settled in to watch a movie, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Everything about this new chapter felt right. The house, the neighborhood, the sense of independence and accomplishment. Looking back now, I realize that Friday evening was the last time I felt completely safe and secure in my new home. Within days, small incidents would begin to accumulate, creating a pattern I was too trusting to recognize until it was almost too late. But that night, curled up on my couch with Marcus, surrounded by the walls I now owned, I believed I had found my perfect place in the world. The housewarming gift would arrive on Sunday morning, and everything would change. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made me grateful for my covered porch and the steaming cup of coffee in my hands. I had woken up early, energized by the prospect of tackling more unpacking and maybe finally hanging the artwork I had been leaning against walls for over a week. Marcus had left Saturday evening to handle some work deadlines, promising to return later in the week. I was still in my pajamas, hair pulled back in a messy bun, when the doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m. Through the frosted glass panel beside my front door, I could see a figure holding what appeared to be a large basket. Assuming it was a delivery, I opened the door without checking the peephole. Veronica stood on my porch, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, holding an elaborate wicker basket wrapped in cellophane and tied with a burgundy ribbon. Her smile was even brighter than usual, and she seemed almost vibrating with excitement. "Surprise!" she announced. "I know it's early, but I couldn't wait any longer to give you this proper housewarming gift." The basket was impressive, filled with gourmet items, candles, a small potted plant, and what looked like expensive bath products nestled among decorative tissue paper. It was far more elaborate than anything I would have expected from a neighbor I had known for less than 2 weeks. "Veronica, this is incredibly thoughtful, but you really didn't need to." "Nonsense," she interrupted, practically bouncing on her toes. "New homeowners deserve to be celebrated. Besides, I wanted to make sure you felt truly welcome to our little community." I invited her in, suddenly self-conscious about my appearance and the fact that I hadn't brushed my teeth yet. Veronica followed me to the kitchen, where I set the basket on the counter and began admiring its contents. Everything looked expensive and carefully selected. Artisanal chocolates, specialty teas, a bottle of wine I recognized from the premium section at the grocery store. "This must have cost a fortune," I said, genuinely overwhelmed by her generosity. "Thank you so much, but I feel terrible that I don't have anything to give you in return." "Your friendship is a gift enough," Veronica replied, her eyes twinkling. "I have such a good feeling about you, Gianna. I think we're going to be very close." Something about the way she said "very close" made me pause, but I attributed the slight unease to my natural discomfort with such immediate intimacy. I had always been someone who warmed up to people gradually, preferring to build friendships slowly over time. As I continued exploring the basket, Veronica moved around my kitchen with a familiarity that struck me as odd. She opened cabinets as if looking for something, commented on my choice of coffee maker, and even rearranged a few items on my counter to what she deemed better positioning. "You know," she said, picking up a ceramic canister I used for storing tea bags, "the previous owners had this exact same one. Isn't that funny?" I found it more strange than funny, but nodded politely. How would she know what the previous owners kept in their kitchen? The comment lingered in my mind as she continued her casual inspection of my space. "I hope you don't mind me mentioning this," Veronica said, her tone becoming more serious, "but I noticed your boyfriend left rather early yesterday evening. Is everything all right between you two?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't realized she had been paying attention to Marcus's comings and goings, and something about her interest felt invasive rather than neighborly. "Everything's fine," I said carefully. "He had some work to catch up on." Of course, of course. I just worry about you being alone in a new place. It can take time to feel completely secure, you know. If you ever need anything, anything at all, I want you to know that I'm right next door.
I barely sleep anyway, so don't hesitate to call or come over, even late at night. Her offer seemed genuine, but there was an intensity in her delivery that made me uncomfortable. I thanked her again for the gift and managed to guide the conversation toward more neutral topics: the weather, local restaurants she recommended, upcoming neighborhood events. After Veronica left, I spent the rest of the morning unpacking boxes in my bedroom while periodically snacking on the gourmet items from her basket. Everything was delicious, though I couldn't shake the feeling that the gift was somehow excessive for such a new acquaintance. Around noon, I decided to take a break and properly examine everything Veronica had included. I spread the contents across my kitchen table, planning to write her a proper thank you note. There were at least 15 items, each one clearly expensive and thoughtfully chosen. Bath salts from a boutique spa, imported chocolates, a small succulent in a hand-painted pot, locally made honey, artisanal crackers, gourmet cheese spreads, specialty teas, the wine, candles that smelled like vanilla and sandalwood, a soft throw blanket, and several other items I hadn't initially noticed.
At the bottom of the basket, nestled beneath the tissue paper, I found a small white envelope with my name written in elegant script. Inside was a note card with a floral border and Veronica's handwriting. Dear Gianna, welcome to your forever home. I have such a wonderful feeling about our friendship and can't wait to create many memories together. Your house is lucky to have someone who will fill it with so much love and care. Here's to new beginnings and the special bond between neighbors who truly understand each other. With warmest wishes, Veronica. The note felt overly intimate for someone I barely knew, but I tried to view it as her personality rather than anything concerning. Some people were simply more effusive in their expressions of friendship. As I was folding the note to put it away, something small and metallic fell from between the card and envelope onto my kitchen floor. The soft ping of metal hitting tile made me look down, and what I saw made my breath catch. A key. A brass house key that looked exactly like the ones I had been given at closing. I picked it up with trembling fingers, examining it closely. It was definitely a house key, not a car key or mailbox key. The brass was slightly tarnished, suggesting it wasn't brand new, and there was a small scratch near the head that looked familiar. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Why would Veronica have a key to my house? Had the previous owners given her a spare for emergencies? If so, why hadn't my realtor mention it? And why would she slip it into a housewarming gift rather than simply returning it or mentioning it directly? I walked to my front door and compared the mystery key to the ones on my keychain. The shape and size appeared identical. My hands were shaking now as I slid the key into my deadbolt. It turned smoothly, unlocking and locking my door with ease. Veronica had a working key to my house. I sank onto my couch, the key clutched in my palm, trying to process this discovery. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe the previous owners had given her a spare and she was returning it in a thoughtful way, including it with the gift as a gesture of trust. Maybe she intended to mention it, but forgot in her excitement about the gift basket. But even as I tried to rationalize the situation, Marcus's warning echoed in my mind. Just be careful about sharing too much personal information too quickly. You don't really know her yet. I called Marcus immediately, my voice shaking as I explained what I had found. She what? His voice was sharp with alarm. Gianna, that's not normal. Neighbors don't just have keys to each other's houses, especially ones they've known for less than 2 weeks. Maybe the previous owners gave it to her, I said, still hoping for an innocent explanation. Then why didn't she mention it when she gave you the gift? Why hide it at the bottom of a basket? And why not bring it up when you first move in? His questions highlighted all the concerns I had been trying to suppress. What should I do? Change your locks immediately, Marcus said without hesitation. Today. And don't tell her you're doing it. But what if she has a reasonable explanation? What if I'm overreacting? Gianna, listen to me. Someone having unauthorized access to your home is never okay. If she has a legitimate reason for having that key, she can explain it after your locks are changed, and you're safe.
After hanging up with Marcus, I sat in my living room staring at the key, my mind spinning with questions and scenarios. The gift basket, which had seemed so thoughtful an hour earlier, now felt sinister. Had Veronica been planning to use this key? Was that why she had been so interested in my work schedule, when I would be home alone? I thought back to our interactions over the past week, searching for signs I might have missed. Her immediate friendliness, the way she had ignored Marcus, her intense interest in my personal life, her casual inspection of my kitchen that morning. Individually, these could be explained as personality quirks or social awkwardness. Together, they formed a pattern that made me deeply uncomfortable. The afternoon sun was streaming through my windows, making my house feel warm and safe, but I could no longer enjoy that sense of security. Someone had a key to my home, someone who had deliberately hidden that fact from me. Whether her intentions were benign or malicious, the violation of trust was complete. I spent the rest of Sunday researching locksmiths and trying to convince myself that I was handling the situation appropriately. By evening, I had scheduled a locksmith for Monday morning and had decided not to confront Veronica until after my house was secure. That night, I barely slept. Every small noise made me wonder if Veronica was using her key to enter my house while I was unconscious. I checked and double-checked my door locks, even wedging a chair under the front door handle as an extra precaution. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized that the beautiful housewarming gift had accomplished something Veronica probably never intended. It had opened my eyes to the fact that my perfect new neighbor might not be who she appeared to be. The key was just the beginning. What I would discover about Veronica Hartwell in the coming days would prove that Marcus's instincts had been frighteningly accurate. Detective Brian Morrison arrived at Mrs. Chen's house within 45 minutes, a stocky man in his early 50s with graying temples and the weary expression of someone who had seen too much of human nature's darker side. He greeted Mrs. Chen like an old acquaintance and shook my hand with genuine concern when she introduced me as the new target. "I've been hoping we wouldn't have to meet under these circumstances," Detective Morrison said, "but given Miss Hartwell's history, I'm not entirely surprised." He reviewed Mrs. Chen's documentation with practiced efficiency, occasionally asking questions or making notes in a small notebook. When I showed him the key I had found in the gift basket, his expression grew more serious. "This represents a significant escalation," he said. "Previous incidents stayed within the realm of trespassing and harassment. Having an unauthorized key to your residence crosses into potential breaking and entering, even if she hasn't used it yet." "What can we actually do about it?" I asked. "Mrs. Chen mentioned that Veronica has been careful to stay within legal boundaries." He reviewed Mrs. Chen's documentation with practiced efficiency, occasionally asking questions or making notes in a small notebook. When I showed him the key I had found in the gift basket, his expression grew more serious. "This represents a significant escalation," he said. "Previous incidents stayed within the realm of trespassing and harassment. Having an unauthorized key to your residence crosses into potential breaking and entering, even if she hasn't used it yet." "What can we actually do about it?" I asked. "Mrs. Chen mentioned that Veronica has been careful to stay within legal boundaries."
Detective Morrison leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. The key changes things. It gives us probable cause to investigate how she obtained it and whether she's used it to enter your property without permission. I'm going to need to interview you formally about your interactions with Miss Hartwell, and I'll want to examine your house for any signs of unauthorized entry. We moved to my house, where Detective Morrison spent nearly 2 hours documenting everything. He photographed the gift basket and its contents, took detailed notes about my conversations with Veronica, and carefully examined my doors and windows for signs of tampering. In my bedroom, he pointed out something I had missed. "See this small scratch on your window frame?" he asked, indicating a barely visible mark near the latch. "This could be from a tool used to test the lock mechanism. It's fresh, the wood hasn't weathered yet." The thought that Veronica might have been testing ways to enter my house while I slept made my skin crawl. Detective Morrison also found scuff marks on my back patio that suggested someone had been standing close to my sliding door, possibly looking inside.
I'm going to recommend that you install a security system immediately, he said. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. If Miss Hartwell has been entering your property, we need evidence. That afternoon, I called a security company and arranged for an emergency installation. While waiting for the technicians, I decided to call Marcus and update him on everything I had learned. His reaction was immediate and fierce. I'm coming over tonight, he said. You shouldn't be alone until this situation is resolved. Marcus, you can't stay here indefinitely. You have work, your own apartment. Gianna, this woman has been stalking the residents of your house for years. She has a key, or had a key, to your home. I'm not leaving you alone to deal with this. His protectiveness was touching, but I also felt a surge of independence. This was my house, my life, and I wasn't going to be driven out by someone with psychological problems. I appreciate that, but I think the security system and police involvement will be enough. I can't live in fear in my own home. By evening, my house was equipped with cameras covering all entrances, motion sensors on the doors and windows, and a monitoring system that would alert both me and the security company to any unusual activity. The technician showed me how to access the live feeds from my phone and explained that everything would be recorded and stored for 30 days. Marcus arrived just as the security team was finishing their work. He brought an overnight bag and groceries for dinner, clearly planning to stay despite my protests. Part of me was grateful for his presence, though I was determined not to become dependent on him for my sense of safety. "Any sign of Veronica today?" Marcus asked as we prepared dinner together. "She hasn't been home. Her car was gone when the detective was here, and it still hasn't returned." Maybe she knows something is up. People like this are often very aware of when their behavior is being scrutinized. We were eating dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the new security camera app on my phone, I could see Veronica standing on my porch, holding what appeared to be a casserole dish. She was dressed more casually than usual, jeans and a sweater instead of her typical polished outfits, and her expression looked concerned rather than cheerful. "Don't answer it," Marcus said immediately. "I have to face her eventually, and Detective Morrison said it would be helpful to have more documented interactions." I opened the door but didn't invite her in, noting that the security cameras were recording everything. Veronica's smile seemed forced, and I noticed her eyes darting to the new cameras mounted near my entrance. "Hi, Gianna. I brought you some homemade lasagna. I thought you might not have had time to cook much with all the unpacking." "Thank you, but that's not necessary," I said, making no move to take the dish. Veronica's expression faltered slightly. "Is everything all right? You seem distant today." "Actually, Veronica, I need to ask you about something. I found a key in the gift basket you gave me yesterday, a key that unlocks my house." For a split second, Veronica's mask slipped completely. I saw surprise, then calculation, then a carefully constructed expression of confusion. "A key? That's strange. I have no idea how that could have happened." Her voice was steady, but I noticed her grip tighten on the casserole dish. "It's a key to my house specifically, Veronica. It unlocks my doors." "Well, that's impossible. I don't have keys to anyone else's house." Her tone was becoming defensive. "Are you sure it actually works in your locks?" The fact that she was asking whether I had tested the key suggested she knew exactly what it was. "I'm sure. I've changed my locks since then." Veronica's face went through another series of micro-expressions: anger, calculation, then hurt confusion. "Gianna, I'm not sure what you're implying, but I would never do anything to make you feel unsafe. If somehow one of my keys got mixed in with your gift, it was completely accidental." "Which key of yours would fit my house?" Well, the previous owners, the Johnsons, gave me a spare key for emergencies. Sometimes when they traveled, I would check on their house. Maybe that's what you found." It was a plausible explanation, except for one crucial detail. Why didn't you mention this when I moved in? Why hide it in a gift basket instead of just returning it or telling me about it? Veronica's composure was beginning to crack. "I forgot I had it. When I was putting together your gift, I must have grabbed it by mistake from my junk drawer." Marcus appeared behind me in the doorway, and Veronica's demeanor immediately shifted. Her fake friendliness vanished, replaced by something colder.
"Oh, your boyfriend is here again." "Marcus lives here now," I lied, wanting to see her reaction. The statement hit Veronica like a physical blow. Her face went pale, then flushed with what looked like rage before she controlled herself. How nice for you both, she said, but her voice was tight. I suppose that means you won't be needing much neighborly support. We appreciate your previous kindness, Marcus said diplomatically, but Gianna and I prefer to keep to ourselves. Veronica's eyes narrowed as she looked between us. Of course. Well, I should let you get back to your evening. She set the casserole dish on my porch without asking and turned to leave, but then stopped and looked back. Just so you know, Gianna, this neighborhood can be unpredictable. It's good that you have someone staying with you. A woman living alone can never be too careful. The statement was clearly meant as a threat, thinly veiled as concern. Marcus stepped forward protectively, but I put a hand on his arm. Thank you for the warning, I said evenly. I'll be sure to stay alert. After she left, Marcus and I watched through the security camera as Veronica returned to her house. Instead of going inside, she stood in her driveway for several minutes, staring at my house with an expression I couldn't interpret from the camera angle. She knows you figured her out, Marcus said, and she's not happy about it. That night, the security system proved its worth. At 2:17 a.m., motion sensors detected someone moving around my backyard. The cameras captured clear footage of Veronica, dressed in dark clothing, testing my back door and peering through windows. She spent nearly 20 minutes circling my house, at one point standing directly outside my bedroom window for several minutes. The recorded footage was crystal clear. There was no plausible excuse for her behavior, no innocent explanation for why she would be prowling around my house in the middle of the night. In the morning, I called Detective Morrison and sent him the security footage. His response was immediate. This is exactly what we needed. I'm issuing a restraining order and pressing charges for trespassing and stalking. Miss Hartwell is about to discover that her pattern of behavior has finally caught up with her. But as I would soon learn, cornering someone like Veronica Hartwell was far more dangerous than allowing her to continue her psychological games. When people with her particular type of obsession feel threatened, they don't retreat, they escalate. And Veronica's escalation would be unlike anything the neighborhood had ever seen. The restraining order was served to Veronica on Thursday afternoon. I watched from my living room window as two uniformed officers approached her front door. Through my security cameras, I could see her face clearly when she opened the door. Initial confusion, then shock, then fury as she read the papers. Detective Morrison had warned me that this moment would be critical. People like Miss Hartwell don't handle legal consequences well, he had explained. They see themselves as victims who are being unfairly persecuted for caring too much. The restraining order might be enough to make her back off, but it could also trigger a more extreme response. His words proved prophetic. Within hours of being served, Veronica began what could only be described as a campaign of psychological warfare. It started with phone calls. Despite having my number blocked, she called from different numbers, her landline, what appeared to be burner phones, even business numbers from her former real estate agency. Each call was the same. Her voice, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, always insisting that I had misunderstood her intentions and that she was being cruelly persecuted for trying to be a good neighbor. Gianna, please pick up. I know you're screening my calls. This restraining order is based on lies and misunderstandings. I never meant to frighten you. I was just trying to help. Please call me back so we can work this out like adults. When I didn't respond to the calls, she moved to other tactics. Letters began appearing in my mailbox, despite the restraining order specifically prohibiting any contact. The letters were typed, formal, and increasingly unhinged. Dear Miss Adams, I am writing to formally request a meeting to discuss the serious misunderstandings that have led to false accusations against me. I have been a respected member of this community for 12 years and have never had any complaints about my behavior until now. I believe you have been influenced by outside parties who do not understand the caring nature of neighborly relationships. I am prepared to involve my attorney if this harassment of my character continues. The letters were signed with her full name and dated, as if they were official business correspondence. Detective Morrison collected each one as evidence, noting that the formal tone suggested someone struggling to maintain control while becoming increasingly desperate. By Friday evening, the situation escalated dramatically. I was working a night shift at the hospital, and Marcus was staying at my house to monitor the security system.
At approximately 11 p.m., while I was checking on patients in the pediatric ward, Marcus called me with panic in his voice. Gianna, you need to see this footage. She's not just walking around your house anymore, she's trying to break in. Through the hospital's Wi-Fi, I accessed my security system remotely. The live feed showed Veronica in my backyard, systematically testing every window and door. She had brought tools this time, a crowbar, what looked like lockpicks, and a small hammer. The infrared cameras captured her methodically working at my back door, trying to force the new deadbolt. I'm calling 911, Marcus said. This has gone way beyond stalking. Do it. I'm leaving work now. I explained the emergency to my supervisor and rushed home to find police cars in my driveway and Veronica being led away in handcuffs. Her composed demeanor from earlier in the week had completely disappeared. She was screaming about property rights and conspiracies, claiming that I had stolen her house and that she was only trying to reclaim what belonged to her.
Detective Morrison met me at my front door. We caught her with burglary tools, clear intent to break and enter. The security footage is unambiguous. She's going to jail tonight, and this time the charges are serious. What did she mean about me stealing her house? People with obsessive disorders often develop elaborate delusions to justify their behavior. In her mind, she may have convinced herself that your house actually belongs to her, or that she has some legitimate claim to it. The next morning brought a revelation that explained much of Veronica's behavior. Detective Morrison called with information from his deeper investigation into her background. We've been digging into Miss Hartwell's history, and it's more disturbing than we initially thought. She doesn't just target neighbors randomly, she has a specific pattern. She becomes obsessed with houses. He explained that Veronica had been asked to leave 2 previous neighborhoods due to similar behavior. In each case, she had fixated on a particular house and convinced herself that she belonged there. The obsession would begin with excessive interest in the current residence, but would eventually evolve into a belief that the house was rightfully hers. In her previous location, she actually hired an attorney to try to claim adverse possession of a neighbor's property, arguing that she had been caring for it better than the actual owners. The case was thrown out, but not before she had terrorized the family for over a year. The pattern was consistent and escalating. Each time Veronica was forced to leave a neighborhood, her next obsession became more intense and invasive. She's been unemployed since her real estate license was suspended, Detective Morrison continued. The suspension was due to complaints that she was stalking clients after sales fell through, convinced that they had stolen houses that should have been hers. She would show up at properties claiming to be the legitimate buyer, even after deals had closed with other parties. This information cast her behavior toward me in an even more sinister light. She hadn't just been targeting me as a neighbor, she had been targeting my house as something she believed should belong to her. While Veronica sat in jail awaiting her bail hearing, I thought my ordeal was over. I was wrong. On Sunday morning, I discovered that someone had been spreading flyers throughout the neighborhood, hundreds of them, posted on mailboxes, car windshields, and telephone poles. The flyers contained my photo, apparently taken without my knowledge while I was in my own yard, along with accusations that I was a fraud who had illegally obtained my house through identity theft and manipulation. The flyers were professionally printed and designed to look like official notices. They included my full name, my work address, and encouraged neighbors to report suspicious activity to a phone number that I recognized as one of the numbers Veronica had used to call me. Marcus found me standing in my driveway, holding one of the flyers with shaking hands. "This is beyond stalking," he said grimly. "This is a targeted campaign to destroy your reputation and possibly get you fired from your job." The flyers had reached my workplace. My supervisor called to ask about concerning allegations that had been reported to hospital administration. While she assured me that they didn't believe the accusations, the fact that my professional reputation was now under attack made the situation exponentially more serious. Detective Morrison was furious when I showed him the flyers. She orchestrated this from jail using phone privileges and outside accomplices. We're going to add harassment, defamation, and conspiracy charges to her growing list. But the damage was spreading faster than the legal system could contain it.
Neighbors who had initially been supportive began avoiding eye contact. Someone had posted the flyer content on local social media groups where it was being shared and discussed by people who knew nothing about the real situation. The most chilling moment came when I discovered that Veronica had somehow obtained detailed information about my work schedule, my bank account numbers, and even my social security number. Detective Morrison suspected she had been collecting this information for months, possibly through mail theft and online stalking. "She's been building a profile on you since before you even moved in," he explained. "Based on the level of detail she has, she may have been targeting your house while the previous owners still lived there, waiting for them to move so she could make her move on the next occupant." The investigation revealed that Veronica had created multiple fake online accounts to research me, my job, my financial situation, and even my relationship with Marcus. She had been planning her approach for months, crafting the perfect neighborly persona to gain my trust while systematically gathering information she could use against me. On Monday evening, Marcus and I were reviewing additional security footage when we made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the basement recordings from the night she tried to break in, we found something the police had missed. Veronica had brought more than burglary tools. She had brought a suitcase. The implications were terrifying. She hadn't just been trying to break into my house to look around or steal something. She had been planning to move in, to replace me in the life she believed should have been hers. As I sat in my living room, surrounded by evidence of months of careful stalking and planning, I realized that the housewarming gift with the hidden key had never been about returning a spare key or even gaining unauthorized access to my house. It had been Veronica's way of announcing her claim to my home, her life, and everything she thought I had taken from her. The final confrontation was still to come, and it would be more dangerous than anything I could have imagined. Veronica made bail on Tuesday morning, posted by someone the police couldn't immediately identify. Detective Morrison called me within an hour of her release with urgent instructions. "She's out, but with strict conditions. No contact with you, no coming within 500 feet of your property, and she has to wear an ankle monitor. But I need you to understand that people like this don't just accept defeat." Her bail hearing was concerning. "What do you mean?"
She represented herself and spent 20 minutes explaining to the judge why you were illegally occupying her house. She had detailed architectural drawings, property records going back decades, and a completely fabricated story about how her grandmother had once owned your land. The judge saw through it immediately, but the level of delusion suggests someone who's completely disconnected from reality. That afternoon, I received a call from my attorney, Jennifer Walsh, whom I had hired to deal with the defamation issues. Her voice was tense as she explained the latest development. "Veronica has filed a civil lawsuit against you, claiming fraud, emotional distress, and something called unlawful property occupation. The paperwork is bizarre. She's claiming that you conspired with the real estate agents and previous owners to steal a house that belongs to her family." Can she actually do that? She can file anything she wants, but the case will be thrown out quickly. The problem is that filing gives her a legal excuse to continue researching you and potentially subpoena your personal records. She's using the court system to continue her harassment. Wednesday evening brought the confrontation I had been dreading. I was alone at home, having convinced Marcus that I needed to start reclaiming some independence despite the ongoing situation. At 7:30 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I could see a woman I didn't recognize, elderly, well-dressed, carrying a large manila envelope. She looked harmless enough, but given everything that had happened, I spoke through the intercom without opening the door. "Can I help you?" "Miss Adams, I'm Margaret Sutton, Veronica's attorney. I need to serve you with some legal documents." I opened the door with the chain lock still engaged. The woman smiled kindly and handed me the envelope through the gap. "I'm sorry to bother you at home, but these are time-sensitive." After she left, I opened the envelope to find not legal documents, but dozens of photographs. Photos of me at work, at the grocery store, pumping gas, walking to my car. All taken from a distance with a telephoto lens over a period of weeks. At the bottom of the stack was a note in Veronica's handwriting. I've been watching you live my life in my house. Soon, everything will be back where it belongs. The woman who had served the photos was not an attorney. She was someone Veronica had hired to gain access to my property despite the restraining order. I immediately called Detective Morrison, who arrived within minutes along with 2 patrol officers. This represents a clear violation of the restraining order, he said after reviewing the photos and note. She's also now involving accomplices, which adds conspiracy charges. We're going to arrest her tonight. But when the police arrived at Veronica's house, it was empty. Her car was gone, and neighbors reported seeing her loading suitcases into her vehicle that afternoon. The ankle monitor had been cut off and left on her kitchen counter, along with another note. If the legal system won't recognize the truth, I'll have to take back what's mine another way. Detective Morrison immediately issued a BOLO alert and upgraded the situation to a potential kidnapping threat. She's escalating to the final stage of her obsession. In her mind, if she can't have the house with you in it, she may try to have the house without you in it. I spent that night in a hotel under police protection while officers monitored my house for any sign of Veronica's return. At 3 a.m., the security system detected movement. The cameras showed Veronica approaching my house, but she wasn't alone. She had brought someone else, a man I didn't recognize, carrying what appeared to be containers of gasoline. The police intercepted them in my backyard. Veronica was arrested without incident, seemingly relieved that her plan had been discovered. The man with her, identified as someone she had met online and convinced that I was illegally occupying property that belonged to her, was also taken into custody. In her car, police found detailed plans for burning down my house, along with maps showing escape routes and a manifesto explaining why destroying the house was the only way to restore natural order to the neighborhood. She had convinced herself that if she couldn't live in my house, no one should be able to. The trial took place 4 months later. Veronica was charged with stalking, harassment, attempted arson, conspiracy, and violating a restraining order. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Months of security footage, documented harassment, the photographs, and her own written plans for destroying my property. She had convinced herself that if she couldn't live in my house, no one should be able to. The trial took place 4 months later. Veronica was charged with stalking, harassment, attempted arson, conspiracy, and violating a restraining order. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Months of security footage, documented harassment, the photographs, and her own written plans for destroying my property. During her testimony, Veronica remained convinced that she was the victim. She explained in detail how she had fallen in love with my house the moment the previous owners moved out, how she had researched its history and determined that her family had an ancestral claim to the land, and how my purchase of the property was part of a larger conspiracy to deny her what was rightfully hers. I wasn't stalking anyone, she said from the witness stand. I was protecting my property from theft. Everything I did was in defense of my legal rights. The prosecution presented evidence that Veronica had no family connection to my property whatsoever, that her claims of ancestral ownership were completely fabricated, and that she had targeted multiple properties over the years with similar delusions. Mrs. Chen testified about years of escalating behavior toward various neighbors. The previous owners of my house appeared via video testimony to describe their experiences with Veronica's harassment. Most damaging was the security footage showing her attempting to break into my house with a suitcase, clearly intending to move in and replace me. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Veronica was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to have no contact with me or my property for 10 years and to undergo mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment. As the judge read the sentence, Veronica showed no emotion until the very end when she turned to look directly at me in the gallery. "You can't stay in my house forever," she said calmly, before being led away in handcuffs. 6 months after the trial, I still live in my house on Maple Grove Lane.
The security system remains active, and I've developed friendships with several neighbors who rallied around me during the ordeal. Mrs. Chen and I have become particularly close. She often brings me tea, and we sit on my porch in the evenings watching the sunset through the maple trees. Marcus and I grew closer through the experience, and he officially moved in 3 months ago. We've turned the second bedroom into a home office where he works remotely several days a week. The house finally feels like the peaceful sanctuary I had originally envisioned.
The neighborhood has returned to normal, though residents are more aware now of the importance of monitoring concerning behavior before it escalates to dangerous levels. Several families have installed security systems, and there's an informal network of neighbors who watch out for each other. I learned valuable lessons about trusting my instincts and the importance of setting boundaries early in relationships. Marcus's initial skepticism about Veronica probably saved my life. If I had continued to dismiss his concerns and accept her increasingly invasive behavior, the situation could have ended very differently. The housewarming gift that started it all sits in a police evidence room, along with the key that was hidden inside. Detective Morrison told me recently that Veronica had actually made copies of keys to my house before I even moved in, using access she gained while befriending the previous owners. The key in the gift basket was her way of announcing that she could enter my home whenever she wanted, a psychological power play that backfired when I recognized it for what it was. Looking back, I realized that every interaction with Veronica was part of a carefully orchestrated campaign to take over my life. The friendly introduction, the elaborate gifts, the fake family stories, the intense interest in my schedule and personal life, all of it was designed to gather information and establish control. But I also learned that communities can come together to protect their members when dangerous situations arise. Mrs. Chen's documentation and Detective Morrison's thorough investigation proved that law enforcement takes these situations seriously when presented with clear evidence. Most importantly, I learned that my home truly is my sanctuary. Despite everything that happened, I refused to be driven away from the life I had worked so hard to build. Veronica may have believed she could claim my house and my life, but she was wrong. The house at 124-7 Maple Grove Lane belongs to me, and no amount of obsession or delusion can change that truth. Sometimes I still think about that first day when Veronica introduced herself with such enthusiasm, and I wonder what might have happened if I had trusted my instincts sooner. But mostly, I focus on the present, on the life I've built in this house with people who truly care about me, and on the future I'm creating one day at a time. The nightmare is over, and my real life has finally begun. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.